All right, welcome to Rewatch or Return, the podcast where we put movies through the ultimate test across 10 universal categories to decide, does it call for a definite rewatch, a definite trip to the return bin, or does our subjectivity cause it to fall somewhere in between? This week, we're going to hit Die Hard with a vengeance. Why not Die Hard 1, Die Hard 2? Why have we not done either of those, and yet we're jumping into the third one? Because it is the 30th anniversary, and I'm kind of currently just sticking with that theme of anniversary films at the moment. So, we're going to look at Die Hard with a vengeance. And with that said, let's jump right into Fast Forward Facts. Let's cue the ticking clock and get ready to diffuse some facts. Because Die Hard with a Vengeance wasn't just another sequel. It was a full-throttle, citywide thrill ride that blew up the buddy cop formula and redefined what an action trilogy could be. Released in May 1995 and directed by John McTiernan, who also helmed the original Die Hard, this third installment brought Bruce Willis back as the ever-grimy, ever-grumbling NYPD detective John McClane. But this time, he's not trapped in a building or at an airport. Instead, he's running all over New York City, solving deadly riddles, dodging explosions, and trying to outsmart a new villain with a very personal grudge. That villain? Simon Gruber, played to icy perfection by Jeremy Irons. And here's the twist. Simon is the brother of Hans Gruber, the original baddie from Die Hard, famously played by Alan Rickman. So yes, Die Hard with a Vengeance is part revenge tale, part chaotic treasure hunt, and with a lot of C4 thrown in for good measure. The film was originally a standalone spec script titled Simon Says and wasn't even written as a Die Hard film. It was eventually adapted to bring McClane back into the fold, which is why the story feels different from its predecessors. More like Lethal Weapon meets The Fugitive. And speaking of Lethal Weapon buddy cop vibes, Samuel L. Jackson joined the franchise as Zeus Carver, a Harlem shop owner who gets unwillingly dragged into the madness. Jackson's character wasn't originally written with a specific actor in mind, but his chemistry with Willis was so electric, it became the heart of the film. This was one of the first major Hollywood films to shoot so extensively on location in New York City. They shut down real intersections and filmed in the heat of the summer. No small feat in a post-speed, pre-9/11 world. The action spans subways, Wall Street, Yankee Stadium, and more, giving it a gritty, grounded feel that set it apart from typical studio-bound blockbusters. Behind the scenes, Die Hard with a Vengeance had a massive budget at the time of around $90 million, and it paid off. The film grossed over $366 million worldwide, making it the highest-grossing film globally in 1995. Yep, even beating out Toy Story and GoldenEye that year. And here's a lesser-known fast fact. The ending was reshot. The original climax had McClane confronting Simon in Hungary with a rocket launcher bluff, but test audiences weren't really thrilled, so instead, they went for a helicopter chase and one last boom at the Canadian border. Musically, the score by Michael Kamen cleverly integrated When Johnny Comes Marching Home as a villainous motif, a darkly patriotic contrast to the ticking time bomb tension of the film. And finally, let's not forget the legacy. While opinions vary on Die Hard sequels that came later, With a Vengeance is often regarded as the last truly great installment. It brought McClane full circle, still reluctant, still reckless, still hilarious, and gave the franchise its most epic scale yet. So next time you hear a payphone ring, just remember, if someone starts with a riddle, you might be in for the ride of your life. Okay, with that down, let's jump into what the critics said. This is where we look at the first 10 top critic reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. First off, from the Chicago Tribune, Gene Siskel said, "Watching Die Hard 3 is like moving along a conveyor belt with shocks applied to your brain every 10 minutes. It wore me out," and this is from a critic who actually put Die Hard 2 on his 10 best list 5 years ago. So that would have been quite, I guess this is at the time. Some of these are directly of the time when this came out, and I'm sure some of these possibly are later, depending on when they were added to Rotten Tomatoes here. Richard Corliss from Time Magazine said, "Some movies ought to be reviewed not by critics, but by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms." Okay. Owen Gleiberman says, from Entertainment Weekly, says the filmmakers overcook the Die Hard concept until they lose the juice of their own recipe. Jack Kroll from Newsweek says, "A ludicrous, impossible story, another whiplashing ride through the world of amazing stunts and special effects directed by action specialist John McTiernan." Brian Lowry says, from Variety, says, degenerates into an improbable, confusing series of chases and an overly involved heist that takes far too long to set up. Barbara Creed from The Age says, if you're an action fan, you'll love Die Hard with a Vengeance. All you need is a strong stomach and a penchant for masochism. If you can endure the pain threshold, you won't mind the glaring plot inconsistencies, woeful stereotyping, and banal story. David Hinckley from New York's Daily News says Samuel L. Jackson ensures that Bruce Willis's third stint as the ragged detective John McClane is a triumphant one. Ian Nathan from Empire Magazine says Die Hard with a Vengeance is better than Die Hard 2, but not as good as the peerless original. Ryan Gilby from Independent says the first 40 minutes of the movie contain the most giddy and intoxicating action scenes you'll find in any cinema this summer. And Michael Wilmington from Chicago Tribune said, this third installment is so loud, fast, and full of chases that watching it is like being abandoned on a set of roller coaster tracks. You're definitely not bored, but you're not necessarily pleased. All right. There's your top 10 critics. Looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those 10 were negative. Kind of the opposite of the 60% positive on Tomato Meter. We got 60% negative on your top 10 critics there. The Tomato Meter, yeah. So you had a 60% Rotten Tomato, 60% on the Tomato Meter on Rotten Tomatoes. The Popcorn Meter, as far as the audience score goes, is 83%. So the audience clearly liked this better than the critics. And the thing that you have to think about this or realize about this is if you or I go and we're going to go watch a movie, generally we're not going to go watch movies that we don't like. I'm not interested in that. It doesn't look like something I'm interested in, whatever. So I'm not necessarily going to go see it. It's just not my vibe, not my thing, whatever. There's a lot of movies that are like that. I'm not saying that you should always judge a book by the cover, but clearly everybody's been in that place where they're like, I might watch that when it comes out on video or if it's on television or something. I don't have anything else to watch, but I'm not going to go to the movie and watch that. It just doesn't look like something I want to go see. Everybody's been there. So the difference is between the audience and the critics. The critics are going to go watch the movie because they're movie critics, right? So they're going to go watch things they don't like. And so you find yourself generally where critics are rating things lower than the audience. And that's because the audience goes and watches these films and they are the ones who want to see these kind of films. So they enjoy them more. Your critics oftentimes are people who are not interested in the film at all, and yet they have to go watch it because it's their job. They go watch a film, they don't like it because it's not their style, it's not their thing, whatever, and they review it. Anyway, that's why a lot of times you see critics with reviews of things and you're just kind of like, where did that come from? Or that doesn't make any sense? Or I don't know why you're so hateful on this thing or whatever. A lot of times it's just because it's not their thing. And that's okay. You don't have to like every movie, but you also don't have to buy every critic review either. Moving on to First Time or 50th. This is just a little segment where we talk about how many times we've possibly seen this movie, or if we've seen it at all. Is it the first time we've watched it, or is it, quote unquote, the 50th, given that the segment. This film I very fondly remember as a kid. Have very vivid memories of watching this super regularly, I think, and I'm not really sure why. I've seen the first two multiple times, but for some reason, this is the one that I remember seeing the most. And I think a lot of that comes from the TNT, TNN, TBS, all that, all the channels that were showing movies on television regularly, probably even at some point Spike TV and whatever, FX and all that. You would see this film pretty regularly, I remember, over the years. And so, I mean, I've watched this gobs and gobs and gobs and gobs and gobs of times growing up. This is probably my most memorable of the original three until later on when I was older in high school. And Live Free or Die Hard, I think that's what it was called, came out. But anyway, out of the first three that came out there was the original trilogy, if you will, this is the one that I definitely have seen the most, and probably the one that I gravitate towards for whatever reason. But it's kind of always a nostalgic film for me because it does take me back to being a kid and watching this a whole lot. Granted, I probably watched it much more on television where it was edited for TV and the language was not the same as it would be watching the theatrical version. So a lot of stuff was cut out, a lot of language was overdubbed and things like that. It was made for the TV audience at that point, but which we'll talk some more about some things related to that later. But anyway, I probably saw it more on television than I did anywhere else, but I still saw it a ton. And like I said, it may be because of that, it may be the reason that it's probably in the running for my top for my favorite Die Hard film. Maybe it's just a nostalgic thing, maybe it's not. I'm not sure. Who knows? No way to really tell. Anyway, moving off of First Time or 50th on to be continued. Would a sequel for this film work? And if there's a sequel, should there have been? Well, anyway, this is a sequel. And because of that, we're going to treat this one a little different and talk about should this film have happened? And my opinion on that is absolutely. I think the first two are great. And I think the original Die Hard is just an absolute classic. I think they followed it up really well with the second one. This one sits kind of apart on its own because you can tell when you watch it, like, this is not the same type of movie. Like, it's got the same vibe, but at the same time it's just sprawling across the city and he's not stuck in one place, and it's not kind of this deal where he's trying to fight his way out of something or whatever. He is trying to figure things out as he goes along, and there's all these riddles and all these things, and you're trying to keep all these little problems that develop throughout the thing. And it makes sense knowing that it was not initially written to be a Die Hard film. They went back in and made it a Die Hard film, but I think it was like a really solid way to wrap up that original trilogy and to come in and do something somewhat original, adding to what was already done, instead of coming in and just going like, hey, let's find another place to stick him. This time we'll put him at a shopping mall that he can't get out of, and he's fighting his way out, and it'll be, John McClane's Paul Blart Mall Cop kind of thing, or something like that. Like, I'm glad they didn't do something like that. I like what they did with this one. I like the direction they went. I'm glad that this Simon Says film came along, or Simon Says script came along, and they were able to go, hey, you know what? This would really possibly work as a Die Hard film if we tweak some things. So I think it's 100% a good thing that this film was made, because it's a very memorable film for me. I think it's a really fun film, and I think we'd be missing out if it didn't exist. All right, before we jump into the final segment, today's episode is brought to you by PrepStartsNow.com, your go-to spot for emergency and outdoor preparedness. If you're anything like me, you'd rather be prepared and not need it than need the essentials and not have them. From 72-hour emergency essentials to camping gear, car emergency essentials, multi-tools, first aid, and even home gardening supplies as you start growing some of your own food, they've got you covered for all of it. And the best part is, as a listener, you can use the promo code REWATCH to get a 15% site-wide discount, and you'll also be helping out the show as they give us a small reward for your business in the process. Head to PrepStartsNow.com/discount/rewatch. That's PrepStartsNow.com/discount/rewatch, or simply enter the code REWATCH at checkout and get prepared today. Okie dokie, with that down, let's have just a little quick recap. There's no way with this film, it's like all over the place, and I don't mean all over the place from a story perspective. I mean, it's all over the place in that it's hard for me if I said, hey, here's how, if I gave you a quick recap, it'd be really hard to do because I can't remember exactly when different things happen in the film. So what I'll say is, this will be like a very general recap of it and not so detailed. But anyway, so the film starts out and there is an explosion and there is a phone call sent into the cops, or that comes into the cops, and this guy calls himself Simon. He tells him who, that it was him that did it, and he wants John McClane brought in. So John comes in, and at this point, he's been separated from his wife, and he's turned to alcohol pretty heavily, and he's just like not in a real good spot in life. But he's been suspended from the NYPD. But anyway, so this guy wants him brought in though, and part of things. And so they go get him because they're like, this guy's setting off bombs and he's threatening another bomb, threatening to blow more stuff up and all this. So here comes John McClane, Bruce Willis's character from, the original two. And they're like, you're back in the game. Here's your badge. Let's, do this. And so through a series of stuff, he's doing what this Simon guy is telling him to do. And there's these problems that they have to solve, these bombs that are in different parts of the city, these places he has to get to on time, and all this before, if you don't get here in time, then this is going to happen. If you don't get here in time, this bomb's going to go off, and all this different stuff. But eventually, he realizes that John McClane, that is, realizes that, this is just basically a wild goose chase. All this stuff is happening so that it can all be a distraction from what's really happening, which is this heist over here in these people where they're wanting to steal gold from the Federal Reserve. So he realizes all that, and then at this point, it's trying to track down the bad guy and find him where he's at, while still sort of following these, following what the bad guy's telling him to do, what Simon's telling him to do. He finds out in the meantime, throughout all this, that Simon, his name is Simon Peter Gruber by birth, which means he was Hans Gruber's brother, and so that's why he's bringing John McClane into this, because Hans Gruber was the guy that he killed and threw off the Nakatomi Tower in the first one, and so now his brother is out for revenge. And so after going through all these hoops and different things and running all over town and all this stuff, he finally gets to Simon and catches him on a boat, and he ends up basically falling right into their trap or right into their hands. And Simon he basically tells everybody, hey, we've stole all your gold, has a problem with the Westerners and all this. So he's going to blow up all the gold on the boat that he stole from the Federal Reserve. And John McClane and Samuel L. Jackson's character, who's been tagging along this whole entire time, are tied up to the bomb or with the bomb. Well, he's got a cable thing. Long story short, they're able to get out. They pick the handcuff lock with a thing, and they end up jumping off the boat and escaping the boat before the explosion. But they know that the gold was actually not on the boat. The gold was taken elsewhere, and he only wanted them to think that he was blowing up the gold on the boat. So then he realizes after this, he had asked Simon when he was tied up, kind of as a joke, like, hey man, I've got a really bad headache. You got any Tylenol or you got anything for it? And as a joke, he throws him this bottle because this Simon character's, we find out at the beginning of the movie that he has chronic migraines, part of the file on him. They know that. So he carries around a bottle of aspirin or whatever it is, and he is sitting on, John is tied up to the bomb, and as a joke, kind of knowing that he's going to die blowing up with this bomb, he still asks Simon, like, hey man, I got a really bad headache. You got anything for it? And Simon throws him this bottle of aspirin, and he goes, hey, don't worry about it, keep the bottle. Expecting he's going to die on the boat, he's going to blow up. They go on with their business. Well, they get off the boat, and he's still got this Tylenol, or this aspirin bottle, and he sits it down in the payphone when he's calling his wife, and he happens to see the bottom of it, and it has a hotel name on the bottom of it. So he realizes where that hotel is on the U.S.-Canada border, and actually the people who escaped the boat, the bad guys, he realized where they are, what area they're in. And then they go track them down at the end of the film, and the film basically ends with kind of a shootout and helicopter chase and stuff. And then one helicopter gets brought down by McClane shooting a highline wire, telephone wire, some kind of highline cable that swings into the prop of the helicopter of the bad guys and causes them to crash And that is how they die, and that's pretty much where the film ends. So, there is a quick, very terrible recap for you. I hope you have seen the film, and that makes much more sense than it feels like it made. But with that down, we are going to jump into now the whole point and purpose of this show, or this podcast, or whatever, and that is the final verdict. Alright, this is where we put the film to the test across 10 categories scored on a scale from 1 to 5, and that scale looks like this. 1 is poor, 2 is weak, 3 is fair, 4 is good, and 5 is excellent. And when we get done with this, we will take this score, we will add it up and see where it falls. 10 to 20 is return, 20 to 30 is return worthy, 30 to 40 is a leans rewatch, and then 40 to 50 is certified rewatchable. So, let's jump into the first category, which is story and plot. Is the narrative compelling and coherent? Does it still hold up on a rewatch? So, some of these critics in the Rotten Tomatoes critic stuff, they talk about this being very jumbled and convoluted and a big mess and whatever. I don't find it to be that way. I follow this film it's very easy to follow. That's one thing I think was very enjoyable about this, is the story and plot. The fact that they were able to, one, take a completely different, idea that was meant for another movie and bring it in, do some script rewrites, work it up, and work in the McClane story, work in the revenge story with Hans Gruber's brother, and all these different things. And the fact that it's just, to me, it was really well done. It's enjoyable to watch. It starts off making you think one thing, but it's a sensible thing. Okay, like there's this guy and he wants John involved, but we're not really sure why. And he's forcing him to do all this stuff and answer the phone and get to the bomb and blah, 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 blah. And it seems like that's the whole point of things, is to do all that. Like, that feels like at the beginning of the movie, like that's the point and purpose, but then we find out it's not. There's more to the story, so they give us a little bit more depth, and you find out, okay, this is his brother, and so this is a revenge thing, and you still really aren't sure what's going on, but we do know that now. So now we're running all over the city and basically having this guy drag us everywhere just to do whatever it is that he says has to be done in time to complete whatever task before something blows up or something happens. So it's a race against the clock constantly. A continued, here's a problem, race against the clock, solve it. Here's a problem, race against the clock, solve it. Here's a problem, race against the clock, blows up, didn't solve it, whatever. And eventually we are given more information and we find out that, okay, now it's not just this thing that this guy's doing to this guy for revenge, but he's using in revenge, he brings this guy in to use him as a pawn in his larger plan to steal gold. So there's nothing to me convoluted about any of this. We're given some information that makes sense. We're given more information that helps us make a little more sense. And then we're given more information that's a little bit of a twist, but we also find out, well, that totally makes sense. They're having them do all this so they can do this. Even right down to getting all the cops involved, causing all this trouble that's pulling all the cops from all over the city to certain places so that these guys can do whatever they want without having to worry about the cops being there. Also, right down to telling him basically, like, the whole thing is about all these bombs going off, and then he tells them, hey, I wouldn't stay on the police frequencies on your radios because those frequencies coincidentally and he said, something along the lines of, like, it's too bad those frequencies just so happened to set these bombs off. Kind of like, oh, we didn't he says it in a way where it's like it just so happens to be the case, but he makes them feel like, whether that's true or not, we can't use our radios now because if we do, we're going to set a bomb off. So they involve a school. Now you've involved kids, and you've involved, you've made it even, you've upped the stakes, and now they think there's a school going to explode, and they don't know which one, and they're running all over town trying to find out which school this bomb's in. So it's like chickens with their head cut off, running around, not even thinking about the fact that somebody could be doing all this just so they could do something right under their nose without anybody knowing, because there's no cops paying attention to that. They're paying attention to all this other stuff. So I think the story and plot on this is great. My only issue with the story and plot is I think the movie is really, 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 really solid, and it just kind of fizzles out with the ending. Like, I think they could have written a much better ending, a much more climactic ending. It feels like it feels like the movie is like builds and builds and builds and builds and builds and builds and builds, and then the end goes, it's just like, oh, well, that's kind of like, like it just, that's the only thing that I dislike about this movie. I've never enjoyed the ending of the film. It just falls flat. But for the most part, the overall story and plot of the film, what's happening, the narrative, the way that it's written, I think is super solid. It's just, if they had written they'd written something different, or if they had ended it in a way that, I don't know. I just feel like something could have been done different there at the end that made it feel like a bigger, out with a bang kind of thing. It just kind of felt, nah. So anyway, for story and plot, because of how much I enjoy the rest of the story, all the way up until that last little bit, which really doesn't affect the actual story and plot of things, it's just like, kill somebody differently, or whatever. That's basically what I'm saying. It would have been different if he had died in a different manner, and if it had been kind of like the dropping Hans Gruber falling off the roof of the building. Like, that was a huge moment in that original film. I wish there would have been more of a, like, you don't even see Jeremy Irons' face, like, once John McClane goes to shoot the cable so that it hits the helicopter, like, you never see anything else about any of the bad guys. You don't see them in the helicopter spinning and falling down or anything. It's just all a stunt, a practical stunt at that point with a helicopter blowing up and falling. And so I just felt like the end could have been done better. Anyway, story and plot, for me, and this is, again, my score, doesn't have to be yours, but I give this a 4.3 out of 5 because I really, really enjoy this story. I really enjoy these kinds of stories. I really enjoy these ticking time bomb kind of vibes in things, and I think that this all fits together really well. You're able to stay with it the whole time. You're able to understand what's going on. It doesn't seem like, well, why are they doing that, or why is that, or why is that? It all makes sense. I really enjoy it. Story and plot, 4.3 out of 5 from me. Now, moving on to characters and performances. Are the characters memorable and well acted, or forgettable and flat? You get a little more out of Bruce Willis. So you get John McClane, but you get John McClane with, like, you're getting a little bit more from him. You're understanding him a little better. He's going through some different things in life. Like, it's just, he's in a little different situation. So, but he still feels like the John McClane of old, who has, I just think they did a good job of kind of like dipping more into what's going on with him, while at the same time he felt very much Bruce Willis playing the John McClane of old from the first two films. I think that was great. I think that there's some annoying things about, like, the racial focus that it feels like they gave Samuel L. Jackson's character. There's an annoyance in that, but, like, they also do some stuff with it throughout the film, and, like, they grow with it. And so anyway, I think, like, he's fantastic in the film. This is probably like the first really memorable role that I have of him. Like growing up, this is the first film that I can like. When I think back of like, if someone said, "What's the first thing you ever saw Samuel L. Jackson in?" I would probably say this, and it's because it's very memorable to me. He was probably in some other stuff before this. This and A Time to Kill are like the two movies from when I was a kid that like really stand out for me for him. Within Jurassic Park, but like he had a very small role in Jurassic Park. But characters and performances, those two are fantastic. I think Jeremy Irons is Jeremy Irons, man. He's great. You had the girl that played his little sidekick chick that was, never spoke and was very like deadly, whatever. That's I can't remember her name, Sam something. She's a music artist. She's not really like, she hasn't done she's done some acting, but like, it's not like she has this very large library of her own acting. She's just been in a few things, but primarily she's a musical artist. But yet I think like she nailed that role. She was very, menacing and very, like you took her seriously, if that's for sure. And then like the rest of everybody, none of these people were from the original two films. None of the, the police folks, none of them were from the original two films that I can remember. There weren't any bits of anything anywhere that I can remember where they were on a phone call with anybody or anything. But they all felt like they'd been there a while. Like it feels like as you watch them, your mind almost wants to go like, yeah, these are the people that we're familiar with. These are the people we're used to, but they're not. So I think like all those guys, which are all really good character actors and all really good supporting actors, every single one of them. One of the guys recently actually passed one of the police officers who was, he's like a Native American guy. I can't remember what his name is, but he passed within the last few weeks. But anyway, they're all great. The characters and performances, I give this one a 4 out of 5 because I think like it's just really solid all the way around. Moving on to pacing and entertainment value, were you entertained the whole time? Did the movie keep your attention? Does it feel too slow, too rushed, or just right? This movie's always entertaining to me. I could pick this up anywhere. You could turn the TV on, it could be anywhere in the movie, and I could start watching from there and be entertained and be pulled in. And as many times as I've seen this, it's still it still makes you feel like, go get it, you gotta hurry, and all that kind of stuff. I just think it's a really fun and really well done movie. For whatever flaws that anybody might think that it has, I think like it's a solid installment, and it's paced real well. I think it's the way that it's written keeps you pulled into what's happening and what's going on. There's times that it does slow down a bit, but it's intentional and it feels right for those times. Anyway, pacing and entertainment value, I put right at good, at a 4 out of 5. Now moving on to dialogue and quotability. Are there iconic or memorable lines? Do people still quote it? Does the dialogue feel natural or cringy? You know what kind of blows my mind about a movie like this? All of the bickering between John and Zeus in this film feel so natural. When it's like, obviously these guys are acting, but it feels like there was some real tension at times on the set, because man, they're like into it, and it just feels very real. I'm just gonna kind of talk about your main characters here, just from the whatever you want to call it, chemistry or whatever between Samuel L. Jackson and Bruce Willis alone, like, make this movie. But every look at me, I don't know what the heck what's happening with my mouth there. Everything between those two feels like it's actually for real happening. It feels like totally natural. I don't think any of the dialogue feels cringy in any way. There's some quotable lines in it. There's definitely some memorable lines. but they're not necessarily anything I would repeat right now, to be honest with you. There's some funny stuff. I always found it very, very, very funny what they did with the overdubs, or like, you know, for the TV versions, how they'll go in and like they'll have to take words out and put TV friendly words in their place. And there's some really, really funny stuff. And funny enough, as far as quotable goes, it's the stuff that they put in the place of the bad stuff for television that to me is most memorable. And there's a scene in particular where Samuel L. Jackson calls Bruce Willis's character, Zeus calls John McClane a racist MFer, and on television, what he calls him, what comes out of his mouth, is melon farmer, and so that's what Samuel L. Jackson calls him a racist melon farmer, according to the overdub for television, and it always makes me laugh because I know that's not what he said. But anyway, stuff like that. That's not necessarily quotable, but I think the dialogue is supernatural. Not supernatural, you know what I mean? It is very natural. And there's so much memorable stuff in it that yet I am not going to get into anything or say anything on here. It's just like I said, the chemistry with those guys is super, super solid. And it makes the film, and it makes their dialogue feel so natural. So, what did I give it? Dialogue and quotability, 4 out of 5. It's right there at good. All right, moving on to soundtrack and score. Does the music enhance the film or date it? Does it elevate the emotional tone of the film or feel out of place? Is it iconic or generic? I think that there's not a lot super memorable about the score of the film, while at the same time, I know the score of the film has so much to do with what you're feeling when it happens. So, like, there's not like a theme that I can remember, but it was like film scores so much of the time just kind of hang there unnoticed unless they're gone. You know what I mean? You don't really pay a lot of attention to that stuff unless it's missing a lot of the times, unless it's like a big fancy theme that we're real familiar with, some John Williams or Hans Zimmerman or Alan Silvestri kind of thing. Like, if it's not something like that, or anyway, I'm not going to get into too much of talking about everybody else, but a lot of those guys make really memorable stuff. But most of the time, movie scores are just helping you to know what to feel, but not really being in the forefront of your mind. And so this one does that really fantastically. It sits back and like doesn't want to be the star of the show, but it also like it gets you a little on the edge of your seat in times when you're stressed out about what's happening, to hurry up or no, they're fixing to do it makes you it helps you feel what you're supposed to feel in the moment, while at the same time not wanting to be a main character. It's sitting back in the back, which is like great for what it's meant to do here. But then at the same time, there's some intro music. I can't even think of the song now, but there's a song at the beginning of the film that's very fitting, and then When Johnny Comes Marching Home is very memorable to me, even from like when I was a kid. I can I can very vividly hear that arrangement and that recording of that song for this film with what's happening on the scene or on the screen, the particular scenes and things that it's I don't know why it seems like it's very dissonant to what the film should be doing for whatever reason. I don't know. I can't really describe how it makes me feel, to be honest, but something about them playing When Johnny Comes Marching Home over what's happening in the film is it just makes you feel like worried or whatever. I don't know how to explain it, but anyway, that stuff is very memorable to me, and I think really well done and really well placed, and not something that you would think about, like why is that the thing that was picked for this film and for that part. I don't know. It would have never crossed my mind in a million years, but it works. Anyway, soundtrack and score, I gave it a 3.2 out of 5. A little above fair. It's adequate. It does what it needs to do, but I wouldn't say that it's anything special at all. Moving on to cinematography and visual style. Is it visually engaging or stylish, regardless of effects budget or genre? Do the camera work and effects still impress, or do they look dated or clunky? There's some effects stuff in this movie. If you'd asked me before I rewatched this for this particular episode, if you had asked me where the big effects moments were, I would have probably said I'm not sure. There may not really be any, because it feels, my memory of things where this was very heavy practical effects, not a lot of CG stuff, not a lot of that kind of stuff in the film. And then I rewatched it and realized there's a few moments that do really stick out, and I think a lot of it is because I watch for that stuff a little differently, knowing a little bit more about it over the years, being really into, not that I'm capable of any effects work, but like knowing how certain things are done, knowing how they do certain things. I see things a little bit differently than I used to, and watch for things a little bit differently, and notice stuff a little differently than I used to. And there's some moments in this where in particular, when he drives the car, he asks him, "Do you have a seatbelt?" And he drives the car off of a bridge. The physics of that whole situation don't happen right. The car almost goes. If you've ever watched Mission Impossible 2, when Tom Cruise drives the motorcycle off the top bridge thingy onto the lower one, and he does not fall fast enough. It's like he just floats through the air for too long. That's what happens in this section with this car. So it looks like the car was on cables in a way that they did jump it, but it was probably attached from the top. So the car ramped and drove through the bridge, but then it was lowered as it fell. It wasn't able to fall naturally, so that on purpose it would fall. It looks like that's what happened. It looks like that's probably the way that they did it. And it just is a little unnatural looking as it falls. But I'll say that the moments where they did this kind of stuff, they cut so quick that before your brain even really grabs what happened, they don't sit on it long enough for it to really do anything or affect anything. Like, before I could even really fully finish the thought of, like, that car looks like it's on cables, like they were already cut and gone and moved out. And I think so, like, the editing was really well done for those moments in this film where, as I watch it back now, I can see that's clearly an effect. However, you didn't hang on that effect. You used it just enough to cut you to the next moment. So you showed me what was happening, and yet you didn't hang on it and go real heavy with any effects. And that wasn't even really an effect. That was just like wire work or cable work with a car. But it looks a little unnatural. But there's some other stuff in there. The water in the aqueduct, I, for whatever reason, as a kid, just assumed it was actual water, and then I realized watching it this time that it's not. And there's real water happening with the dump truck stuff and the aqueduct, but also I can see where there's added CG water or composited in miniature stuff or something. I don't know. I can't tell you exactly what it is. I can just see with my eyes and tell, like, that's not quite real, but it's all done really well. It's all blended really well, and for the time and for the day, for 1995, it's still really solid. And at no point watching this film does it feel like the effects are clunky. It doesn't really feel like any of the practical work is clunky. I'll say that there's a scene where he throws the bomb out of the back of the subway and then it explodes. I got to thinking, how many times in movies over the years have we seen an explosion in a subway and then the subway train car come off the track and go sliding through, busting down pillars along the way or sliding through. I just feel like it's been done so many times. I honestly could never see it again and be totally happy. Let's stop with the subway explosions. We've seen it too many times. It's been done over and over and over and over and over again, where you could almost just like drag and drop this one from this movie or this one from this movie or this one from this movie. They almost all look exactly the same. Well done practical. Not saying that it looked fake necessarily. It just seems like they all are done the same. That was just a thought that I had while watching the movie. Let's stop with the subway explosions and the train cars sliding through underground. But the practical stuff in this film is really well done. There's a lot of really good. The editing is really solid on this film. It looks really intentional at times. I know that it is, but what I'm saying is, like, you can tell there's like some heavy intent on the way that they edited this stuff, and because they did it that way, it flows really well, and you don't catch a lot of the stuff. I mean, like they edited around and cropped out or framed things in a way where it was really well done, and that's McTiernan for you. He's a great action director. But anyway, I think the film was really well shot. I think that the effects at the time don't affect it now. I think it is perfectly watchable now, and it doesn't feel old, like, oh man, those old effects, or that was really like it. I think like it's like a really solid action film from that era, which there are so many of them. I mean, when those guys were it's just hard to beat an action film of that era. It just really, really is, because it's all so well done, because they're blowing stuff up, because they're flipping cars, because they're, shutting down city blocks, and I mean, they still do that stuff today, but there was just something about those action films in that era that man, they just feel like they just have a thing about them. I don't know how to explain it. But the camera work and the effects are, I think, really work together. I don't think anything feels really clunky. I think there's just a couple of spots where, knowing what you're looking for, if you look real quick, you can go, oh yeah, oh man, I can see where that was, where I didn't see it before. I didn't pay attention to it before. In stuff like this, I'm looking for that all the time. I'm looking for that stuff every time I watch these things now, because I'm going to talk about them. But anyway, cinematography and visual style, I gave a 4 out of 5 because thumbs up. I think it's good. Originality and creativity. Does the film feel fresh and inspired, or like something you've seen 100 times? Was the film groundbreaking or formulaic? Does it bring something unique? I think I've already touched on this, but the interesting thing of this film is I think that they did take a fresh take at this. They didn't go, hey, we did this. Die Hard movies are about this. Die Hard movies are about John McClane being stuck somewhere and then figuring out how to get out and having to, trying to communicate with people on the outside while he's stuck on the inside. That's what Die Hard movies are. I love the fact that they said, you know what, we're going to make a Die Hard movie, but we're going to do it different, and this is an a entertaining story and a different story and a different take, while we can also bring that character in, and we can do this. And I think it was there was a lot of originality in bringing that in and rewriting that script for this film in particular. I don't think it's formulaic. I don't think it feels like we've seen it 100 times. The idea of this Simon Says thing, and then having the twists and stuff in the movie that we thought it was about this, but it's actually about this, and we thought they were doing this, but they're actually doing this. I just think it was like really solid. I think it was a pretty original script, original and creative, and I really liked it. So, originality and creativity for that reason, I'm gonna put as at a 4 because I think it's good. It felt like they're trying to do something new and different with the franchise at the time. Moving on to, did I say? Okay, 4 out of 5. Yeah, I did say that. Theme and message is next. Is there a deeper takeaway, and does it explore ideas that resonate today? So, obviously, this is a sort of kind of buddy cop action film from the mid-90s. I don't think there's going to be a lot of heavy learning something from the movie kind of thing, but there are some themes in it that you can take away. The idea of redemption. You've got John McClane, who has things aren't working out at home with his marriage. Because of that, he's started to drink too much, and he's been hard to deal with, and he's been suspended from the police department because he's probably been a little out of hand and a little uncontrollable and all this. But when it comes down to him being needed, and when it comes down to being a good cop, and we see through all of this, for all of his faults as a human being, we see how great of a job that he does. Which, on a side note, if you ever notice, like, McTiernan movies oftentimes are like people that are great at what they do. So, like, The Predator, these are soldiers who are like the best at what they do. Granted, they're fighting an alien predator, but they're like the best at what they do. They're completely competent and super solid and the best of the best of the best. Even here, John McClane, for all of his faults, when he's actually in cop mode, he's the best at what he does. You know what I mean? He's a super solid cop. Even the scene where he's in the elevator and he sees he's got all this stuff going on. He's been shot. He's bloody. He's got, dirt and whatever all over him, and he's been sweating and running all over town all day. And he's now a little bit suspicious in general. He starts to realize there's something else going on. He's in the elevator with these guys, and he sees a reflection of the badge of his buddy. He realizes that this guy in the elevator with him is wearing his buddy's badge because he sees the badge number. And so he goes through this whole thing of, trying to have it's a very John McClane thing. He's talking about, you guys play the lottery, my wife, says, something, my wife plays them all the time, and I always tell her, why are you, he says, my wife plays every week, and she plays the same 2 numbers, and I say, why do you keep playing the same 2 numbers? And she's like, well, they're my lucky numbers. Here, let me show you. I got the ticket right here. And then he goes, like he's going to grab the ticket, but he grabs a gun and starts shooting the guys that are with him because they're all bad guys, and he realizes it and knows it. And then you have the fight inside the elevator. But that's the same conversation that he had with the guy at the beginning of the movie, and the guy was talking about how his wife was asking him why he plays the 2 number. I think something along those lines. It was a conversation about the lottery and him playing his badge numbers, and then realized that's his buddy's badge number because so it was a callback to that situation. But it was a very intuitive cop moment for John McClane. And you see, again, for all his faults, you see that this guy is a great cop. Everything else aside, this guy's a great cop, and he is putting himself and his body on the line to stop this bad guy. And so there is some redemptive theme in that. I think you see some growth in both the Zeus character and John's character throughout the movie when it comes to like some race stuff. Like maybe they're a little bit irritated with each other because McClane is told to go at the beginning of the movie and put a message on his chest that's very racist, and then he has a really bad interaction with some guys that are going to take that message very personal. So now he's kind of got a little bit of maybe an edge in a racial way against some people. And then you've got Zeus, who has some sort of racial issue, and throughout the film, these two guys that maybe have a little bit of a problem with each other because of their race are working together and realize by the end of the movie they've stuck together. John doesn't leave Zeus on the boat to die. Zeus tells John to go ahead and go. Hey man, like, you save yourself. It just gets to a point where they've set the race stuff aside and just realize like we're two people and we're just trying to solve the problem here and trying to get by and trying to get through. So there's like a message of that in there too, which I think is, it's not necessarily meant to be huge, but like that stuff's in there. And so from a theme and message point, I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. I think it's like right there between the fair and good. There's something you can take out of it. It's not some huge deal, but like there's some some stuff you can pull out of there. Cringe factor is next. Let's see here. Any jokes, effects, or moments that haven't aged well, or were always bad, moments that make you now wince, or they're campy, cheesy, bad effects, outdated jokes that aren't funny, yada, yada, yada. There's kind of a Hillary Clinton joke in there. Not like a joke about her, but there's something, I guess at the time, 95, Bill Clinton, was Bill Clinton elected in 96? I can't remember now. So, yeah, he was elected in 96. So he would have been still president. Anyway, I guess Bill Clinton would have been president in 95 unless I'm crazy. So he says, they're talking about the president, and they say what's half of 42 is 21. So he's talking about the 21st president, but then Zeus is thinking 42 because he heard 42. And so he says the 42nd president, Hillary Clinton. And John says, no, she'd be the 43rd. So I guess John's character in his mind, if Bill Clinton's president, is thinking, no, there's no way that she would be president directly after him. It would have to be somebody else, and then she would have to run. Because, I don't know. I really don't know I don't know. It was just a really kind of random moment for the film. And now, doesn't make a lot of sense for probably a lot of people watching it. But watching it now, I just think to myself, what we're going through, people's minds about the future, or what would be, or whatever. Anyway, the mid 90s, and that's what was being kind of sort of, I don't know. I don't really know where I'm going with that, other than that was just a moment that stuck out to me where it took me a minute to think through who was president and why, and so what would Hillary Clinton be brought up in that moment for in 1995, because she hadn't ran for president yet, but her husband was president. So if she was going to be president, it'd have to be later on, but they weren't expecting her to be the next president. She'd have to be the president after that next president. And it took me a minute. Anyway, not that there's anything cringe about that part of the movie. It just was out of nowhere for me. I thought, anyway, let's see here. Cringe factor. I gave it a 3.9. I don't think there's anything super cringy in it, but it is a 95 action film, so it is what it is. I don't expect it to be completely without cringe. There's that typical, it's not as cringy as a lot of 90s action stuff, but it's not it's some super cringy movie at all. I gave it a 3.9 out of 5, meaning it's kind of right up there in that good area, still fair, but almost right at good, staying away from the cringe. Moving on to nostalgia and rewatchability. Does it hold up to your memory of it? Does it still matter today? Is it timeless, or has it aged poorly? Does a rewatch ruin the magic, and would you honestly watch it again? Does the film hold up to your memory of it? Yes, I enjoy this film. I always enjoy this film. When I watched it again, it felt just like every other time I've watched it. Didn't feel any different. Does it matter today? I think like not some major way, not in some major influential way, but like I think it matters in that it was the kind of the end. Die Hard being a classic film and a classic franchise, it was really truly probably the end of like Die Hard being Die Hard. The later ones felt like Bruce Willis cop movies. Live Free or Die Hard was I enjoyed. The other one I don't remember anything about. I can't even remember the name of it. But this wrapped up what felt like, the last of that true Die Hard era. And because of that, I guess it matters in some way because it belongs to that classic franchise. And I don't know if it's timeless, but I don't think it's aged poorly either. I mean, I think that, like, you watch this movie, the people it may look like a different era. It may look like mid-90s because that's the time that it's set in, but I don't think, like, it has aged poorly. I don't think the practical effects have aged poorly. And I don't even think that some of the stuff that's barely noticeable is any worse than some stuff you see in many films today. So I don't think it's aged poorly. I just don't know if I would say that it's timeless. And a rewatch definitely doesn't ruin the magic for me. I'm going to watch it plenty more times in the future, I'm sure. This is just a very nostalgic film for me. So for nostalgia and rewatchability, it's clearly a subjective score for me, but like I have a lot of baked in nostalgia with this film, and this film is a very rewatchable film for me. So I gave this a 4 out of 5 on nostalgia and rewatchability. So now let's go through here and find out what the score was on this dude. Story and plot, I gave it a 4.3 out of 5. Characters and performances, a 4 out of 5. Pacing and entertainment value, 4 out of 5. Dialogue and quotability, 4 out of 5. Soundtrack and score, 3.2 out of 5. Cinematography and visual style, 4 out of 5. Originality and creativity, 4 out of 5. Theme and message, 3.5 out of 5. Cringe factor, 3.9 out of 5. And nostalgia and rewatchability, a 4 out of 5. So that brings our whole score for this whole thing to a 39.5 out of 50, which means this didn't quite make it in that certified rewatchable area, but it falls between 30 and 40, meaning it leans rewatch. It just may be debatable by some. Some people aren't fans. A lot of people, this is their favorite Die Hard movie. I would love, like I said, to me, this is a totally rewatchable movie. And some of these movies I would love, like if you just ask me, hey, is that rewatchable? I would say yes. And I want them, like, in my heart to fall in the certified rewatchable category. But like I've said before, I'm going to score these the way that I feel like they should be scored and then find out where they fall when it's all said and done. This is all subjective anyway, and this is not like it's some true test of a film. These are just categories that make this fun. It's fun to score things. It's fun to see where they fall. And just because it leans rewatch for me, it may not lean rewatch for somebody else, and it may be certified rewatchable for some other people. This is just my score, like I've said a million times. But anyway, I feel weird that this is the first on the podcast. I feel weird that this is the first film from the Die Hard franchise that I'm covering, not because I don't feel like I should cover it, but like I'm a little obsessive compulsive, and so I feel like I should do things in order, and the fact that I haven't touched the first one and I haven't touched the second one and here we are doing the third one makes me feel a little bit odd. I'm hoping to get to the others eventually, but I just still wanted to hang on that anniversary thing, and because this is the 30th anniversary year of this film, which blows my mind still. But anyway, I'm staying with that 30th anniversary theme, and this was just kind of the next one on the list of films that I was sort of checking out to see what films were having anniversaries. I'll try to probably get away from the 30th anniversary and maybe go older or younger, but the last couple have been 30th anniversary, so we'll move on to some stuff that's not 1995 for a few weeks, and probably get into Halloween and some other Halloween themed stuff going into October. But anyway, that is going to be the end of this episode with Die Hard with a Vengeance falling at Lean's Rewatch. For those of you who are on YouTube, it would be awesome to hear in the comments what you think about the film. I'd love to have a conversation below about that. And for the rest of you, if you're listening on the podcast, you can comment and check us out on the Rewatch or Return Instagram account, if you have Instagram, social media there. It's Rewatch or Return on Instagram, and I'll generally post the episode graphic, and then underneath that, if you have something that you want to say or you want to have a conversation about it or whatever, that'd be cool too. Or just go follow if you're on whatever form you're at, whether it be audio podcast or on YouTube. Follow if you want, like all the things, share them with your friends if you think, hey, this would be something that they're interested in. That'd be cool. It'd really help me out and help this thing out. And I hope you're still hanging on and enjoying things as we've come along to whatever episode this is at this point. But anyway, that is going to be all, and we'll catch you next time.